in the fight against Boko Haram. I'm not sure we are very certain of that. As a people, as a government, and as institutions, military. So, how many battalions, how many brigades, how many divisions, and how many personnel are involved, okay? And I'm saying this against the backdrop of the fact that we found out in the last 2 years that we actually have the phenomenon of ghost security officers, of ghost soldiers, and ghost police officers. So we don't know the number of people that are employed and engaged. And I'm not sure we are actually very certain of the number that we are deploying. And I'm not sure we are then also certain in terms of the ratio of those that are deployed to this front and the ratio that is left behind in other places and the rest of it. So that's the second part of that problem. So in a case where you are not that certain, it probably would also be difficult to also account for everybody that is actually fighting. Because if they are there, they are deployed officially, but there's no record of their deployment that is traceable. Then if anything happens to them, it's also difficult to be able to then say in concrete terms that something has really, happened to them. So that's also a very important and significant part of the problem that we really need to look at. And then, of course, with the question of figures and the rest of that is also the fact that, like I said, coordination between the different arms is also important. So, okay, soldiers, but what about Air Force personnel and the rest of that? And then there is also a special unit of the police force that is the counter-terrorism unit that is also deployed to the front lines. That is not just undertaking internal security duties, but deployed there. So all of this, we need to be able to account for them. And if we are unable to have a system in place where we can have accurate information about personnel, about operations, and about deployments, then it will be difficult to really be able to overstate or understate these kind of things, and it gives room for people to actually understate, because if there are no records, if you have 100 casualty, but you have record for 20, then 20 is what you can officially declare. It's difficult for you to declare 100 when you don't have record for 100.
Given the sacrifices that our soldiers have gone through for us, and they are now being buried privately, what's your opinion? Do you think they actually should have a private burial for reasons I don't know? Or do you think we should appraise them and sing them as heroes?
There are a number of ways you can look at, and there are a number of approaches that you need to take into consideration. Now, there are factors that you need to take into consideration. For me, I think it is more important. I think that the more important factors are the families and the families that are grieving, the actions that we take with respect to their burial, with respect to how we treat their demise, the fact that we lost them in battle, how we retrieve their bodies, how we treat the bodies before burial, how we bury them, and then the post-burial relationship that we have with the family is very important and very significant. How do we help families to grieve? Not just immediate families, but the extended, because we do live in a culture where the extended family is very important, So how do we deal with all of that? So what would be the best approach to do that? And I don't think that anybody is looking at all of these things. Now, so in the private burials, you would want to ask the question, so were families taken into consideration? What role did We are not doing that. We are not doing that often enough. And there is nothing that says that this cannot be done at the division level, at the brigade level, even at the national level. We can have days, and particularly in instances where we have lost such huge numbers, you can have a national ceremony at Eagle Square at the tomb of the unknown soldier, and do a national ceremony for these people, and you can place candles, wreaths for the number of people, soldiers that were lost, to symbolize that. Okay, while the interment can be a private thing, I just don't feel that we are according them the respect that the services that they have rendered, demands and deserves, and I don't think we are treating their families, fairly by not according them this kind of recognitions. What happens to giving them posthumous commendations? I'm sure there are so many commendations within the military that can be given to them, posthumously for their service. Can be part of that national ceremony. We need to get to a point where we start doing things that can boost the morale of our troops, so that people know that okay, I signed on to this job. I have a sense of sacrifice, but I know that my sacrifices will not be in vain and will not be taken, for granted. I think that's very important, and we need to put mechanisms in place to ensure that that happens.
So finally, these people having died now, and soldiers having died, do you think that we as a nation should have actually pulled down the flag to fly low in honor of them? Because it seems like we all carried on like it's not even our business.
Yeah, the funny thing is one of the most decisive component of the state structure is the instrument of force, and which is the armed forces and the law enforcement agencies, the security agencies. So this is one of those instances where state leadership is very important, and the role of the state is very important. Okay. Okay. My challenge is that because this is an election year and on the eve of the elections, even when probably some people in government recognize and realize that this ought to be done, but you see, you don't want to show, particularly if you have spent the last 3.5 years saying that Boko Haram is technically defeated. You don't want to show that this technically defeated enemy is actually, inflicting such levels, of casualty and damage and harm on you. And so if you had then done all of these ceremonies, you would actually be playing into it. And of course, we can see, within the calculation of politicians in Nigeria, we can see how politicians and opposition politicians can, make use of that for their purpose. But again, in other climes, when things like this happen, you see both the opposition and the government unite to grieve, to lead in grief, because that should be the responsibility of leadership, political leadership. And part of political leadership is also offering responsible opposition, accountable and responsible opposition. We should be able to identify what are national interests. After we have done that and we have done the ceremony, we can go back to our debates and talk about what we have done, that we have not done well, and what we will do if we were the ones in charge and the rest of that.
Nigerian soldiers killed in the theatre of war against Boko Haram in Borno State were buried last week. The Islamist fundamentalist terror group ISIS has been fingered in the attack on Nigerian military formation, which caused the death of the soldiers. This fact points to the heightened dangers which the Nigerian troops face and the great sacrifices which they make every day to preserve Nigeria's nationhood.
The fifth columnist or the insider is not necessarily within the Nigerian army. We may have foreigners who are actually not supporting us, but who are hell-bent on ensuring that this insurgency continues.
We need a probe of military funding, particularly the funding here marked for the fight against insurgents. Could it be true that some people are actually using this as their own honeypot?
Very unfortunately, the debate over the number of troops killed, which the Nigerian military has kept a very high low-key about, has obscured a more important issue. It is understandable that the military follows the appropriate procedure in reaching the families of the bereaved soldiers. It is also understandable that the military does not celebrate the number of killed in order not to dampen the morale of the troops.
And some of the reasons why figures may be downplayed may be in order not to create panic. Right now, even the figures that are out there, there is panic, because if the military can be dealt with in this way, the people begin to talk about what might then happen. Okay, so you might want to reduce panic, but you need to weigh that and balance that with the question of building trust and confidence. So if you're going to tell a lie, you are better, if it is necessary to tell a lie, you are better tell a lie that you cannot be caught in.
What is not easily understandable, however, is the private burial given to the fallen heroes. Just in case there is any doubt, the Nigerian soldiers are some of the nation's best, who have enlisted to sacrifice their lives to preserve the nation and its people. Such a sacrifice captures the greatest gift which any man can give to his society. To bury the dead soldiers privately, instead of defiantly and proudly, is a sign of national ingratitude.
So in the private burials, you would want to ask the question, so were families taken into consideration? What role did the families play in doing it? So those are the questions you would want to ask. The second thing is also that the burial proper itself, and you can separate that into two things. You can have a private interment ceremony when they are actually interred, okay? But you can balance that with a public ceremony for their burial. We don't need to be there when you are interring them, for example. Probably just the families that are grieving, and this is the practice globally, really. But we can have a public ceremony to celebrate them.
The least the military should do is allow Nigerians as a people to mourn their loss, defy the terrorists by celebrating the heroes, and show gratitude to the families of the fallen heroes.
And if the state is not playing a leadership role, citizens are not going to follow suit. So this is one of those instances where what the state ought to do, okay, was to accord honor to these individuals. Part of that honor, like I've said, is doing a public ceremony. We can actually fly. We should be able to even declare a period of money, a day, 2 days of money, fly the flag at half-mast all over official places. We should be able to do those kind of symbolic things.
Whether one soldier was killed in the attack or 100, as observed by PDP presidential candidates Atiku Abubakar, President Muhammadu Buhari should have been at the burial. Today, the Nigerian flag must fly at half-staff in all ships in the nation's waters and buildings and embassies. This is the least the nation can do to show gratitude to the fallen soldiers. Ifunanya Ilodianya for Signature TV.